have to think about good memories. I have to really dig really deep to get past all of the bad ones. I was seeking for love, for attention everywhere, and most of it was not in the greatest places. I felt relief. I felt safe, something that I hadn't felt in quite a few years. My life changed after that. I want to try to give hope to the hopeless. God is so good.
City Center Church, welcome to our gathering today. Today we're continuing our series called The Bridge, discovering the other side of our stories. Man, I believe that we're all in this moment walking through many difficult things. As we look at the things that are on the landscape of our world right now, it is a crazy, crazy time. And I think we all have a little bit of trauma that we're dealing with. And so when we think about the side of the story that we're on now and where we're trying to get to, it is so hard to get there. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? And so today we're talking about unanswered questions. Man, if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or in our Zoom, man, I want you to just type in the comments unanswered questions, because I believe we all have them. Unanswered questions like this. Are dinosaurs real, or were they ever real? Come on, there's debates about that. Maybe in the Bible, did Moses actually split the Red Sea? Come on, that sounds crazy. Or maybe you have questions that I have, like Chick-fil-A. Man, I love me some Chick-fil-A. I went there yesterday. It is so good. But why the heck are they closed on a Sunday? Like, it is frustrating. No one's got an answer for it. Well, we kind of have an answer for it, right? God, I guess. But maybe you've got unanswered questions like, man, like, will I ever find my spouse? And we all deal with unanswered questions, but maybe they go just a little bit deeper. And so maybe the question that you're posing to yourself right now is, why is God allowing so much injustice to happen in our world? Maybe right now you're walking around and you're wondering, like, God, why did you allow me to lose? And then just fill in the blank. Man, we've all been there, and I believe we're all there right now, unanswered questions. And so when we think about Jesus being the bridge to the other side of our story, we can't find a way to get there because our questions that we're walking through just don't feel like they're being answered. Maybe in your mind you're wondering, like, God, why do you actually allow bad things to happen? God, why is it that the world is saying one thing about people and you're saying something completely different? Maybe that's a loved one that you're walking through. And so here's the great thing about unanswered questions. We all have them. And even in the Bible, yes, the Bible, there were unanswered questions. There were men and women who asked God the hard questions. And here's what I love about God. He's okay with it. Come on. If you're listening in right now, if you're on Zoom or you're on YouTube or Facebook, just say, God's okay. Like, whatever you walked into this gathering questioning today, it's okay. Man, this week I found out that my dad is in the hospital, right? And he's dealing with kidney issues and with COVID. And so it's one of those moments where you can sit back and say, God, I don't get it. But the great thing is that there are many people who ask that question, and it doesn't get God worried because you're asking it. And so I want to encourage you with this. If you didn't hear anything else from me today, God's okay with your unanswered questions. God's okay for you to question the things that He's doing. He's okay for you to question, bring your issues and your problems. And here's the funny thing. If you look at Psalms, which is a book in the Bible, the psalmists within those scriptures were actually not afraid to ask the hard questions. They were not afraid to express doubt. Have you ever expressed doubt in your life? They asked endless questions because they were dealing with deep despair. They'd ask questions like, God, are you truly the true God? Have you ever been there? Or maybe they've asked questions like, God, and maybe you felt like this, why have you abandoned me. Anyone ever been there before where you felt abandoned? You felt like, man, God, if you're real, why aren't you here? Or if you said that you're good, why haven't you fixed the problem that I'm walking through right now? Maybe you've asked a question and the psalmist asked us, why are the wicked so successful? Have you ever been there? Like you have someone that you've met and you're like, man, like this person should not have the house that they have and the money that they have and the job that they have. And so within you, you're asking like, how could this person have this when I don't have what I need? And so as we think about these questions, these unanswered questions, the psalmists, they would question, they would examine, they would challenge, they would have doubt, they'd have despair over God's lack of answering. And so today we're going to pose some questions. I'm going to bring some lasting information about what we're discussing. And then I'm going to bring up a friend of ours, Danny, who's going to help give us a psychological viewpoint of how do we walk through these things. And so I want to start with this passage of scripture. And it's found in Psalms. And in this passage, you see the psalmist asking those difficult and hard questions and then seeing where it goes from there. And so if we can pull that passage up, can we give it up for our tech team doing a great job? And so this is what the psalmist says. It says, sometimes I ask God, my rock solid God, why? Can someone just put that in the comments? Why? We've all been there before. Why did you let me down? Have you ever been there? Where you felt like God or someone in your life has let you down? Why am I walking around in tears? Have you been at that place where you're in such deep despair that all you can feel is hurt and pain, and you're tearing or crying? Harassed by enemies, they're out for the kill. These torments with their obscenities, taunting day after day. Where is this God of yours? And then it goes on. Sometimes I ask, I've already read that one. It's not on there. We're going to leave it there. So, but as you look at that passage of scripture, you look through the psalmist, all the things that they were asking and questioning. And here's our question for today. If we can jump back to our question for today on the slides, which is this: what do you do when you have questions that go unanswered? What do you do when you have questions that go unanswered? So here's our main point. Here's the main point that I want us to think about as we're walking through this question of what do I do when I have unanswered questions? And here's the main point for today, which is this: when we walk in deep despair, Jesus offers us endless comfort. If you remember from week 1, we talked about 4 things, and this was the third one in there, which is this: when we walk in deep despair, I believe Jesus offers us endless comfort. And so what we're going to do is we're going to read a passage of scripture in Matthew chapter 5. And this is right as Jesus comes on the scene, right as there are new people following Jesus, and he's got disciples that are walking with him. And he starts his ministry, in the Bible they would call it the Sermon on the Mount, with this passage of scripture. And this is what it says. It says that when Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed, climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. I love that. What it doesn't say is when Jesus' crowd was growing that he went on Instagram and took some pictures. Come on, right, somebody? What it doesn't say is that when his ministry grew, he got a bunch of people who were selling tapes and CDs. Like, what I love about Jesus is his heart was always for the people. So as the crowds were growing and he moves onto the scene, and it says this is what he said as he moved to this next stage. It's so crazy to think that he begins the first sermon he ever speaks talking about this idea of despair and problems. And this is what it says. It says, you're blessed when you are at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God in his rule. He says, you're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. I'm going to read that one more time. It says, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. Has anyone, come on, if you're listening in, go ahead and type it in the comments. Have you ever been at the end of your rope? Have you ever had a moment where as you're walking through issues and problems that right at the end of that rope, you feel like, man, how am I going to make it? And Justin, if you can put some faces up on the screen for me. I can't see anybody. I can't see your faces if you're on Zoom, but I like to see it, but I know that you're there. Have you ever been there where you're at the end of your rope? So then he goes on, with less of you, there is more of God in his rule. And then he goes on, you're blessed when you feel where you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the most dear to you. Man, I'm so glad I can see your faces now. What's up, my Zoom people? How you guys doing back there? For those who are on Facebook and YouTube, hey, I always tell them, hey, the best place to be is in Zoom because we can see each other. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk us through a few simple points, and then I'm going to invite Danny up here. We're going to have a quick conversation, and then if you're on Zoom, you'll get to jump into your discussion groups, and then if you're on Facebook and YouTube, you're actually going to be able to ask us a bunch of questions, and so I want to encourage you, start writing down your questions now. But we're going to move into our first few points here, and here's point number one as we're thinking about walking through despair and finding lasting comfort. And point number one is this. When we can't make it to tomorrow, he gives us strength. Man, when we can't make it to tomorrow, maybe you're listening in right now and you feel like I've got such deep despair that I don't know how I'm going to make it to Monday. I love that when we can't make it to tomorrow, he gives us strength. I love that when Jesus started his ministry, the first thing he did was said, man, I'm here for you. When you're at the end of your rope, I'm there to give you strength. But he doesn't leave it there, so we go to point number two, which is this. That when you are crippled by pain, he offers you relief. When you're crippled by pain and you feel like no one can understand and you have no way to get past it, when you're crippled by pain, Jesus will offer you relief. Because again, as we're walking through our deep despair, it's not that Jesus just fixes the problem, but his promise is that he's always with you. So point number three is this. That when we feel alone, he is beside us. I think when we're walking through deep despair, when you're walking through deep despair and you feel like you're alone and by yourself, what Jesus offers is as you're on your bridge, or maybe you're not on the bridge yet, and you're trying to get to the other side of your story and you don't know how you're going to make it, he says, I'm going to walk beside you. And then point number four is this, that when we need support, he gives us help. And what I love about the help, and I think there's so many times when sometimes maybe we feel like, hey, I shouldn't go to a counselor or I shouldn't use medicine or whatever those things are. I believe that one of the best ways that God helps us, the way Jesus helps us, is he gives us people. Come on, think about times in your life when you've had people who have helped walk you through a deep situation. If you're on Zoom, have you ever had someone who walked with you through a difficult time, right? Maybe you're on Facebook or YouTube and you've got you can remember a moment where you were in deep despair and someone walked you through that moment. And so I'm excited that God gives us people who can help us, right? And so when we need support, he gives us help. So that's friends, family, medicine, counselors. And so what we're going to do right now is I am going to invite up one of our friends. Her name is Danny, and she's going to come up here, and we're going to talk about just despair. We're going to talk about pain. We're going to talk about what does that look like from her standpoint and how she helps people, how she gets to be the voice of God in the hearts of people. And so with no further ado, can we give it up as she comes to the stage? Danny Fitch! Hey. Check your mic. Is your mic working?
Can you hear me?
Good? Can you guys hear it? Thumbs up if you can hear it. Yeah. Hey, we are super excited that you are here. And she is, as you can tell, she's a little bit shorter than I am. I like to say just vertically challenged. Is that okay? Vertically challenged just a little bit. We're talking about deep despair. Go down a little bit lower to her questions for me. We're talking about deep despair and finding endless comfort. And as pastors, there are times where we could just say, Jesus is just going to fix it. Right? And so then we all know that when I just say Jesus is going to fix it, that means that people are just going to get better tomorrow. Now,
Done.
what we do know is we serve a God of miracles.
Absolutely.
Miracles happen. But sometimes God's best way to help us is through people. And
Right.
so I would love to start from your standpoint. When you think about despair or pain, like what do you think about? Give us some words of wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start by actually just doing a very therapy thing really quick, which is I just want to acknowledge something, which is really important. This is such, and I appreciate you bringing me on for such a lighthearted topic, but I think it's really important just to name really quick, and I say this to a lot of my clients, that when we're unpacking something that's really heavy and has a lot of layers to it, it's really easy to, I think, walk into a conversation and whether you realize it or not, have an expectation that I'm going to walk out of here and I'm going to have that magic formula and everything's going to be okay.
You tell me that if I sit down with you, it won't be just perfect after?
No,
either?
I'd be out of a job.
Okay.
So, just kidding. One thing that I always challenge my clients with, and I challenge in love, which is at the very least, can you walk out of here today saying, I feel like I have a different perspective of something that I walked in here with, that I was wrestling with? Can you walk out of here with, at the very least, a different perspective to wrestle with and unpack and challenge yourself with? That part of self-reflection and growth, I will tell you, and we can talk about this later, actually leads to deeper healing later on. So the second thing I just want to validate is this word despair is something I think in this last year alone, more than any other year, I have had to walk through with almost every single one of my clients. Clients who have come to me in places of saying, I feel like I'm not allowed to feel this way because I don't have a reason to be in despair, all the way to clients who arguably have very good reason to be in a place of despair, but feel like they're wrestling between their faith and finding a sense of healing. So the fact that you are bringing this into, I think, a faith community and having a conversation from a clinical lens and a faith lens is so powerful. So yeah, just want to validate, if you're out there, if you've experienced this in this last year, I will tell you, you're not alone. I've had to walk through this with a lot of people in the last year. So
let me ask you this. Yeah. So people are listening in, and I think there's sometimes in our lives where it's hard to reconcile our faith and then medicine, right? So it's like, have you guys ever been there, like where you're like, okay, my faith tells me, okay, God can do anything, but my problems, my chemicals within me are there's effect to it. So like, how do you help someone that's maybe listening in right now and they're like, man, like I'm going through deep despair. Maybe they haven't talked to anyone, or maybe they have that mindset, if I talk to someone, I'm just going to be fixed right away. But then how do you reconcile that? Because, the Bible would say, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And, but with that doesn't mean that we can't both have faith and couple that with, the people that God has given this gifting to. So how do you have like that conversation with people?
Oh man, that's going to take me down a hole. Okay, I'll keep it short. Well, anyone that really knows me knows that one of my biggest hearts is this idea of moving from this place of either or to both and. And as somebody that really grew up in a faith community, I know that for me, dealing with very real trauma, very real depression, and it wasn't like these outright messages that were spoken, but it was almost like this underlying message in church communities where if you're struggling with something like depression, all you have to do is pray, and that's like the magic formula. Yeah. But then what happens is you pray and you're begging God for relief, and then when it doesn't come, the first thing that happens is you feel this overwhelming shame that says, there must be something wrong with me. I must not be a good enough Christian. I must have offended God in some way. And so we either go really deep into this place of shame and pull away from the church. We pull away from getting help. And so just to, again, validate that if you're out there, you're not alone in that. But one thing I know, even in my own journey as being on one side of the couch to the other, in therapy, so to speak, that God is so present in the work that I've seen happen in the room, where I think just giving yourself permission to realize that those messages that were sent either came from a place of fear, they came from a place of misunderstanding or ignorance. And I'm so grateful for communities of faith that realize that God can actually be present in the room. And you dealing with some very real stuff doesn't have to mean you shut out God. It means God can be actually a part of the work that you do in therapy.
That's super good. So, okay, this is what I want to do. If you're on Zoom and you've got questions that you want to ask Danny, go ahead and put it in, because what we're going to do, we're going to start doing this where we will cut our live discussion times and we'll post them throughout the week so you have an opportunity to listen back. So go ahead and post some questions on Facebook. Nancy, if you guys want to text me any questions, we'll get them answered during this time. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, get ready because we're going to stay up here in about 3 minutes, and we're going to have just a conversation, answer some questions, some Q&A. This is a great time if you are like, maybe you're feeling shamed right now. Like maybe you're like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm afraid to talk to a therapist. I'm afraid to express what I'm really feeling because I don't want to be hopeless. You know, like I feel like there's sometimes when people are like, okay, maybe this is their last drawer. And like, if I take this last drawer and it doesn't work, right now what do I do? And so I want to encourage, let this be like a first step. I believe that God blesses and uses people to help us. The word is our foundation. We can trust and have faith in God, but God uses people. That last point, right? Like if you're looking for support, God offers that support with people. So why don't you start throwing some questions in the chat right now? We're going to discuss it, but just so that we give our Zoom people just another question, let's go with this one. How does despair affect us? Yeah. You know, and we can hit that a little bit more in our thing, but for as you're listening, like how does despair affect me personally? Like what does that look like?
So I'm going to start actually with, I know that when you first brought up this topic of despair, I think I told you one of the first thing that comes to mind with a word like despair is I think it's really important to actually identify what does that word even mean. And let me ask you something. Like if you were to hear the word despair, would sadness be the first thing that came up?
It would, yeah.
Okay, totally fine.
I failed.
No. Yes. Look, here's the thing. Sadness is something every single one of us experience. It is a very normal human emotion. The difference between sadness and despair, though, is sadness is something that comes and goes. Something causes us to feel sad, but eventually it dissipates, right? We move on, the situation resolves itself, and sadness is going to be one of those things that just kind of come and go throughout our life. Despair is very different. Despair is, almost think about, it's a type of sadness that digs in. It digs in and it's so powerful that the best image that I could give you is, I know when I went through a season of despair years ago, it felt like I was in this big black void and that I was just screaming out questions that I couldn't find answers to out into nothing. And that's what it feels like. And if you actually look at what that word despair means, the literal definition is without hope. And so being in a place... Let me pause you for a second.
Yeah. Go ahead, if someone could, on our Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, just put despair without hope. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. So I'm assuming there's probably more than one of you who have been in that place of feeling like, I'm in a place of feeling hopeless. I don't have any hope, whether it's hope about the future, whether it's hope about my sense of self, whatever that is. Despair is literally a place of feeling without hope. But I'm going to throw something else out at you. If you actually unpack what that word despair, like the literal translation and the etymology, is there's actually two other words that are used to probably more accurately describe despair, and that is without breath and without spirit. And I remember the first time I heard that, I think that hit me the hardest and seemed to be something that I connected with the most, because that idea of being without spirit, I will tell you as somebody who is a Christian, but even if you're not, our spirit is essentially the essence of what makes us human, right? It is the essence of who we are. So to be in a place of despair is like saying you are completely disconnected from your humanness. That is a deep, hard place to get to. And so if you were sitting in the room with me, I would actually force you even just to sit with that idea of how does that hit you when you hear somebody say, despair is almost like being completely disconnected from everything that makes you human.
That's deep. It's deep, and I think that's a great place to jump into our groups now from. And so I think Paul is our Zoom host for today. And so, Nancy, are we set and ready to go? I would encourage you, man, be open and honest, not too honest if you don't feel comfortable, but if you are feeling comfortable, man, be honest. If you're in the Zoom groups, this is a great discussion. Isn't she doing a great job? Can we give it up for Danny for being here with us? And
distracted by that guy.
We're going to jump into our time now. So let's go ahead. We're going to do just a little bit shorter time in our groups, and so we'll hope to pull you guys back in here in the next like 12 minutes. And so you guys can go ahead and go out on your Zoom. What you're going to see now is you're going to see Justin put up just our logo slide on the screen for just about 10, 15 seconds. And then from there, we're going to jump into a little live Q&A. So go ahead and fill the comments with your questions. This is free of charge. It doesn't cost you anything to ask these questions. And then we'll be back up here in a moment.